the different blood classes. Is that a way to put it? Different wizarding backgrounds. I don't know. You all know what I'm saying. We had a really hard time reconciling that because the allegory is very clearly racism and definitely points to, as Noah says here, the Holocaust and Jewish people and different races, whether you consider being Jewish a race or not. That's your personal preference. But yeah, we had a really hard time reconciling that in the book because they're clearly not one to one, but they clearly speak to each other as well. It was difficult. Thank you. My long point there was thank you for pointing that out because I really loved that quote and I was glad that it made it into the final edition of the book because I think it's important to talk about that stuff. So, yeah.
To that point, as Tracy was reading it, I started thinking about it, and it kind of bothers me a little bit the way that Ron reacted when it comes out that Filch is a squib. The way
Yeah.
he kind of made light of it or made fun of it because it was Filch. But then we see he is very defensive of Hermione when it comes to the term mudblood. So he kind of picks and chooses which classes. He's still kind of picking and choosing which class of wizard or non-wizard is better, even though he claims to be not that way.
Yeah, we talked a lot about this. What episode was it? I think it was the episode with Professor Wamble, Julian. Yeah, it was episode 402. We talked a lot about how even though they are meant to be our quote unquote good purebloods, the Weasleys still hold a ton of prejudices against people who are not pureblood. Clearly not as strict and strong as the Malfoys, and probably not towards, Muggleborns, half-bloods, or whatever, but we see it against the Dursleys, and that's what we talked about in that chapter, The Invitation, about how Molly just says, well, we're going to come pick you up whether they want you to or not, which is really just dismissal of the Dursleys as Muggles. Granted, fair because the Dursleys are the worst, but here Ron is very clearly showing his prejudice against squibs because he's a pureblood, and why should he have any respect for squibs?
And it just made me a little sad for Filch because he can't help it. So, I mean, and he clearly loves his cat. I feel a little bit sorry for him. And then the way Braun is just sort of flippant about it was just a little, I don't know, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, well, I mean, even when he even does it again to Slytherins once we get into Professor Binz's class,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the next day. Yeah, the next day. He says a lot of crap about Slytherin. And I think that this foundation that the author is showing us with Ron about his prejudice and definitely his jealousy, because a part of the reason he really defends Hermione so strongly is his jealousy. Obviously, a little bit is like his Gryffindor chivalrous side showing through, but I think a lot of it is, the other stuff. But yeah, he slams Slytherin a lot here too, which I don't know.
So what stood out to me about Ron in this chapter is that he seemed a little bit more mature than the other. Like, it felt like his responses almost made him sound like an old man. He was just very like to the point, very direct, very like, oh well. Like it just made me I didn't really like what he was saying some of the times, but I just thought it was very. It was interestingly. It was for what are they 11, 12 at this point, 13. They're like he was just very to the point for a 13-year-old. I thought it was interesting.
Was there a particular moment or line that stood out to you that made you think that?
Saying Percy was like, you just want it because you want to be priest. I thought that was very something I feel like an adult would say to their brother when they're fighting, not so much a kid. And then at one point, Harry's like getting all in his feels about Justin Flinchley, and he's just like, I don't know why you care. He's a bit of an idiot. He was just for a kid to not, because usually like at that age, middle school, you're more into you care what people think. I thought he'd be a little bit more like, oh yeah, that sucks. I'm sorry that someone doesn't like you, Harry. He's like, yeah, whatever, fine, move on with your day. It was very
Yeah.
interestingly mature for a kid.
Okay. I don't agree, but I hear what you're saying. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is very, I think the word is, well, I want to say secure, comfortable in his opinions. He's very confident in his opinions, especially when he starts spewing the Slytherin hatred. And there was a time actually where I would have probably agreed with him way back early on when I first started reading the series, and I was so much younger. I would have been like, oh yeah, Ron's right, Slytherins are the worst, blah blah blah. But now as I've gotten older, I'm kind of now more in the camp of Slytherin being misunderstood. And we see that they're not all evil as the beginning books want to make us believe. And in actuality, all three members of the trio have some Slytherin traits, which I think is common for, all the students at Hogwarts. All of their traits kind of overlap with other houses anyway. But for Ron to be spewing so much Slytherin, but then to have some of the traits of that house himself is super hypocritical. But I do appreciate that he's confident in saying what he says.
Do we think Slytherin is Ron's second house?
Hufflepuff.
Hufflepuff.
He just wants to be comforted and fed. I don't know much more to than that, but I just feel like in his heart of hearts, family and the people around him is more important than anything else.